Oh man, so torture is the common lot of mankind. You see, we're progressing in the gospel. We're progressing in what we're learning. The world, the wicked part of the world, is getting more wicked. Wickedness is becoming more intense and more pervasive, And I was just thinking about how torture is the common law of mankind, which is really weird. Like, it's weird to get to this point in I guess in scriptural timelines. It's like we're at a point where everybody's being traumatized, everybody's being poisoned. And I used to think that Jesus being tortured was, especially when I was like a teenager or whatever, it was like, well, that's so beyond us, it's so foreign. And there's some irony in that word, but it's like, especially me, because I grew up in a very peaceful, rich area. So I was like, wow, Jesus was tortured to death, put on a cross. But now his cross, his being tortured, is almost, for our days, for the people who are suffering in our day, it's like he did that. And I don't know if the actual crucifixion was part of his suffering every pain for mankind. I mean, because other people have been tortured, crucified. So just being crucified wouldn't make you a savior. But being crucified, being tortured, was like, it's almost like God was like, well, if you're going to be the savior and you're going to understand people and what people experience in a body, you're going to have to be tortured. And he was tortured through the atonement, and I think that happened through just, his nerves and his blood vessels and his mind. Somehow God caused all of the suffering that he could suffer through his body and soul. And that might have been even before the crucifixion. But I just see people who are abused, people who go in the military. We're all being tortured by the food companies. Children are being tortured with vaccines. And Jesus understands what that's like. And I understand what it's like to be chemically tortured through pharmaceuticals and mercury and through bad diet. And so I look to Jesus as like he understands what I've been through, even more, obviously more than I have, but he understands because he's a fellow citizen of the earth. And it just seems that nobody can escape being tortured. Some people can. Some people live a full life and they never experience physical suffering too much. But, there's a huge percentage that are tortured by their spouse, by their parent. There's, rape, sexual abuse, wars, famine. There's so many people. Most people suffer physically in their lives. And you look at people who are aging now, it's kind of interesting because you have the two dichotomies. You have people who are young, who are being tortured, people who are old, and they meet like a bookend. It's like the youth are being tortured with vaccines and the pollutions in the environment because the pollutions are so fast and they're just put in their body, and it's like a boom. They're autistic, they get Crohn's. Crohn's usually happens about 14 years old. And then you have the elderly who they've had toxins their whole life, and then by the time they're 50 and 60, it's just shut down of the brain, but it's not like death of the brain. It's just make your brain weak. And so there's just torture. That's what this world is. People are just being tortured, and the rich people, the healthy people, they have no clue. I mean, they have no clue. They have no clue how it's happened. They have no clue that vaccines are just torture for children. We're not educated on health. It's really weird if you think about it. It's almost like Satan made this deal. It's almost like we made this deal with the devil where, okay, we'll do what Satan wants. We'll have fun. We'll do what we want, and we'll commit adultery, and we'll blaspheme Jesus. But in return, it's almost like it's like we get disease and unhealthiness. In the education system, were you ever taught about natural cures? Were you ever taught about people's experiences being cured of cancer, being cured of diabetes, and how they did it? And I'm not saying like in a way where it's like, okay, well, this is the way things have to be done. I'm just saying, even just as like a curiosity. You were never told those things. You were never given those stories. You were never taught everything that the body needs, every vitamin, mineral. You were never taught the healthiest foods. And pasteurized milk is proof of that. It's like America made a deal with the devil, and in return, it's like he took away the spark of life. Take life out of food and all this stuff. But anyway, I just think about Christ on the cross. One thing I don't understand about Jesus is he suffered for everybody, but he didn't suffer like here's something I think about, like people who suffer for decades, like in paralyzed, back pain, whatever. They have to look ahead and see like, okay, just knowing you're going to suffer for 10 years, knowing you're going to suffer for 20 years. Jesus never suffered that. So that's what I don't understand. I mean, I still believe in Jesus, but I don't understand how he suffered like more than anyone, and he understands everyone. But his suffering was only like a day or whatever, it was a couple days or whatever. And I'm like, well, he doesn't understand long-term suffering. He doesn't understand somebody suffering and knowing they're going to have to suffer for 5, 10, 20 years. I mean, that's the worst, because being tortured is okay. Like if you know you're going to die, like if you're being tortured, I guess most of the time it's like you're going to die within that day. I mean, I had times where I had depression or whatever. It was like, I didn't want to live 30 years. I didn't want to live 20 years, and so that's one question that I have about Jesus. Like, that's like my biggest question. Like, that's my biggest thing. And I think other people understand it better than I do, but it's like, that's what I would ask like a leader in my church, or whatever. It's like, well, I thought Jesus had to experience all pain in all situations of pain, he didn't experience long-term suffering. He experienced big suffering, like he suffered like getting his bones cracked and head bashed in and eyes ripped out. Like I understand he experienced the most intense pain, but to me it was like within a short amount of time. And I guess if he suffered more than anybody else, even if it was like 3 hours or 5 hours, that can seem like eternity. So I could understand it that way. Like if it happened over a 10-hour period where he's suffering more than anyone else, and getting his arms ripped off, and, all this stuff, and the pains of sin and all. So that's confusing to me. Anyway, but people are being tortured, and I have a new view on Jesus being crucified. I see his crucifixion less as something a God was doing and more of like just a brother. Like he's like, hey, I want to experience what other people experience. I want to know what it's like to be a totally innocent person and to just suffer. I don't deserve it, because that's so common. You think of all the wives in the world who are just live lives of horror and terror, and by their husbands, kids who are innocent who suffer. It's like, man, you can face the most extreme suffering at any point, at any time, at any country, and that's really sad, man. And we all know it. I mean, I'm not saying anything new, but I just see his crucifixion. Now his atonement, the suffering, the greatest suffering that he suffered, that was the suffering of a God. But the crucifixion, especially since crucifixion was so common, it was the Roman Empire. It was like the most powerful empire, and that was common. I mean, it's really weird. Like, it's really weird to think that they would crucify people, and like I could just walk down the street and go watch it. Like, that's pretty weird, right? Like, and I guess that means that torture in that culture was not a big deal. Like, if we saw somebody being tortured, we'd like pass out. We'd like be in shock. But back in those days, I guess, seeing somebody being tortured, whatever. I mean, nowadays people, children are tortured with vaccines. We see torture, but we see it like people are chemically tortured through pharmaceuticals, and it's like, it's called like a silent kill. It's not blatant. Like the drug companies aren't saying, oh, well, we're torturing you, it's okay. But it's pretty crazy, man. I mean, you think about Crohn's disease that's caused by pollution and messing people's DNA with vaccines. It's like, that's torture. And these people would probably rather be out in public and having people watch them sometimes than just being alone in a bathroom. Like, you're just being tortured on the toilet. Like, the toilet is the modern torture device for a lot of people. A lot of people have Crohn's, and that is hell. I mean, imagine the worst bowel pain you've ever had and times it by 10 or whatever, and have it be all day. And their bowels are on fire. It's because their nerves are damaged, their DNA is damaged, whatever. And when you get a shot, when you get a vaccine, it's called a shot. It's called a shot. And a lot of people have been shot. And so Christ is he's becoming this man, this God that condescended below all of our pains and all of the suffering to lift us all up. But Jesus is becoming our brother, our father, our friend, he understands. He knows what's going on. He knows about the suffering. And he's not standing aloof, like another God would, or another leader or whatever. Think about the leaders of the world who have no clue about the torture that's going on with vaccines and mercury fillings and people being poisoned and having their food destroyed, and milk's not normal, our breads have been bastardized. You go into Walmart, it's just death. There's no live food there. I mean, real food doesn't exist. Where are you going to get raw milk? Where are you going to get raw milk? Where are you going to get raw cheese, clean water? You get water in plastic? Well, those have phytoestrogens, those mess with your hormones. I mean, that's great. That's great water. I'll drink water that messes with my hormones, It's like, where's the spring water in glass? Where is the sunlight? When are you getting sunlight? When are you getting full body sunlight? You should be getting it at school. They should literally have like an hour every day where the students go out and lay out. Well, I guess that'd be kind of weird, but where are you getting pure water, pure air, and where are you getting health from? So we live in a very sick, weak time physically. I mean, spiritually too, but physically, I mean, we can't think right. Our brains aren't working. We can't enjoy relationships. I mean, you put mercury in people's bodies. I mean, goodbye. And we're just being tortured. Our lives are being wasted. At the prime of our lives, too, a lot of people. And that's another thing about Christ's sacrifice. He was sacrificed when he was the strongest physically and mentally and socially. He was ready to go, man. He was going to take over the world. He was going to save the world, and we killed him. And that's why the whole superhero thing is kind of funny. We're so into superheroes. I tell our kids, oh yeah, the world loves superheroes. No, we don't. Like, Jesus was going to be a superhero. He was going to save us from immorality. He was going to help us to be virtuous. He was going to help us to be healthy. I mean, a guy who can just say to a dead person, arise, I mean, he probably knows how to get you to be healthy. Probably knows a thing or two. He probably knows a thing or two about health. But yeah, he was going to save the world, but we don't want superheroes. We don't want superheroes. And that's pretty crazy. It's pretty sad to think about it. But we don't want superheroes, and we don't. And when I say we, I mean, like, the leaders of the world, even religious leaders. I mean, there are some religious leaders who are very wicked, who will sell God for money. That's something to think about in this time of religious people. I mean, there are some religious leaders who will sell God for money. But yeah, I'll keep on talking about that. But Jesus is our common brother. Lucifer is destroying as much of your body as you can, as quick as he can. Well, maybe sometimes he doesn't. Maybe he wants you to suffer and be tortured. But that's like his job. Lucifer's job is to kill you, to torture you, also to destroy your soul, to get you to love him so that you are damned and are turned into an angel of the devil. But there's always been war. There's always been people who want to destroy other people. Now, war can be different because that can just be some people fighting for freedom or whatever, but there have always been people who will kill It's just to kill. But anyway.